So I didn't plan on taking part in Sci-Fi September this month. But then I got to the end of the month and realized of the 8 books that I read, 5 of them were in the science fiction genre. So welcome to my mostly sci-fi September book roundup. I'm going to share with you short reviews and ratings for the 8 books that I read this month. If you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe, and drop me a comment below if you read any of these books or if you just read some sci-fi this month. And make sure you stick around to the end of the video. I'll give you my book of the month and then let you know some of the things that I'm looking forward to reading in October. Well, let's first start with the non-science fiction selections. I read one on my Kindle, a book called Crosscut by Meg Gardner. This was a recommendation from Stephen King, and when my favorite author recommends a book, I pretty much put it on my TBR. And this was a pretty good thriller. It was a story about a woman who's going back to her high school class reunion, and people start getting murdered. Her classmates start getting murdered. It's a very tightly drawn thriller with some good characters, some good reveals, and there's actually a side plot that's somewhat science fiction-esque, so it might qualify for this month. But it is pretty much a straightforward thriller. I did enjoy it quite a bit, and I gave Crosscut by Meg Gardner 4 out of 5. All right, another of the non-science fiction selections was Billy Summers by Stephen King. I already did a full review on this one, so if you want to watch that, I'm going to link it up here and then I'll drop it in the description below. But I really enjoyed this tale about a decorated war vet who became a professional killer, and this is the tale of his final job. So Billy Summers, again, you can watch that full review, but I did enjoy it quite a bit, and I gave it 4 out of 5. And my final non-science fiction selection this month was Circe by Madeline Miller. So there's a lot of hype around the 2 books by Madeline Miller, Circe and The Song of Achilles. And I'll say that it mostly lives up to that hype. I thought this was a very strong book. From initial conception to execution, I think Miller did a great job in bringing this character and this story to life. If you don't know who Circe is, Circe was one of the minor characters in Homer's Odyssey. And this is kind of a modern retelling, although it's still set back in the time of the Odyssey, but it's a modern retelling by Miller. And it fully fleshes out her character, the world, and was pretty tight narrative from beginning to finish. However, I didn't get the feeling when I finished this book that this was a best book that I read this year, that I see all of the accolades. You know, several publications listed Circe as the best book of the year. And it made me think that a lot of the mainstream publications only read mainstream contemporary literature. So when they're faced with a fine work of fantasy, they're pretty much blown away because they don't get to read in that genre very often. Frankly, there were several books in the fantasy genre I read this year that I think were better than Circe. However, Circe is a very fine book, just maybe not book of the year material in my mind. So I gave Circe 4.5 out of 5. All right, on to the science fiction portion of the month, starting with one that I read on my Kindle, and that was Wayward by Blake Crouch. Wayward is the second book in the Wayward Pines trilogy, which began with the first book, Pines, which I read a few months ago. What I really liked about Pines is it's a very tight science fiction thriller. You know, I read it in about 2 days, and the third act of the book just went a totally different direction than I would have predicted, and I don't think anybody could probably predict. Well, the second book picks up pretty much right where that first book left off, and if anything, I think that the narrative was a little tighter in this book. I really enjoyed this one. There was one plot point that was a big reveal at the end that I saw coming a mile away, but there was another one which was a major cliffhanger at the end of this book that I didn't see coming at all. So I really enjoyed Wayward by Blake Crouch, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5. All right, the next one is technically space fantasy, but I'll allow it for mostly Sci-Fi September, and that is the book Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. This is set in the Star Wars universe. This is actually a reread for me. I read this, I think, mostly when it came out. I'm not sure exactly how soon afterwards I read this, but in the meantime, I had not seen the show Star Wars Rebels, and there had not been the final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars. So seeing Ahsoka's character in those shows it helped my enjoyment of this book quite a bit more because this book takes place in between the two series. I really enjoyed it. I think E.K. Johnston did a fantastic job at the personification of Ahsoka. Very, very quick read. I gave it a solid 4 out of 5. All right, and last but certainly not least, the last 3 books that I'm going to talk about very briefly here are by Frank Herbert, and they are the 4th, 5th, and 6th books in his Dune Chronicles, and they're the last 3 books that Herbert contributed to the Dune universe before he passed away. The 4th book was, of course, God, Emperor of Dune. The 5th book is Heretics of Dune, and the final book was Chapter House Dune. I'm going to be very brief with all 3 of these because my next video, I'm preparing a video talking about all 6 of Frank Herbert's Dune books. So if you're interested in that video, maybe hit the little bell icon down there. It'll give you a notification when I drop that video. I'm hoping to do that in the next couple days. So I'll be very brief here because I will go on in much more detail in that video. But God Emperor, I found that was probably the strongest of all of the Dune sequels. And I enjoyed all the philosophical topics, and it was very thought-provoking, and frankly, there was a lot that I didn't quite unpack because it was quite a dense tale. Still had a great narrative, still had great characters, enjoyed it quite a bit. I gave God Emperor of Dune a 4 out of 5. Heretics of Dune, however, I did not enjoy. It was the only one of the 6 that I can say that I didn't like. I felt that in his effort to rebuild the universe and introduce the characters, plotting and pacing were kind of thrown out the window, and frankly, I don't think he did a very good job with it. I gave Heretics of Dune a 2 out of 5. And then Chapter House Dune, he kind of regained his footing in the Dune universe in my mind, and Chapter House Dune was very strong. I felt that it was the Bene Gesserit book, which I wanted to learn more about that sisterhood quite a bit since the first Dune novel, and this gave you quite a bit about that. And I enjoyed Chapter House Dune. I gave it a 3 out of 5. So that was the mostly sci-fi book roundup for me this month. My book of the month was Circe by Madeline Miller. Little sneak preview to next month. So some of the things I'm going to be reading. So first of all, I will be finishing the 3rd book in the Wayward Pines trilogy by Blake Crouch. That is, of course, The Last Town, so I'm really looking forward to that one. Need to read that right away because the 2nd book left such a cliffhanger. Additionally, I'm going to be reading a big classic this month, and that is Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens. This was Dickens' 2nd novel. Looking forward to reading that one. And then the book series that I'm so excited to read is the Live Ship Traders trilogy of Robin Hobb, Ship of Magic, The Mad Ship, Ship of Destiny. I won't read all 3 in October. That's kind of a tall task. They're all about 900 pages, but I'm already, you can tell the bookmark, I'm reading Ship of Magic right now and thoroughly enjoying it. So excited to read some more Robin Hobb. But that was my month. If you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe. Drop me a comment below if you read any of these, or if you even just read some sci-fi this month. I'd love to hear about it. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.